So those three things, education, internationalism, and values based on Christianity, were the three things that were most important in my life. And here was a school that had a new vision, it had a new direction, and it was something that I really wanted to get involved with and to support.
Vanakkam and welcome to the special interview on KIS Global Changemakers Day 2021. Today our special guest is Jane Cummings, class of 57. Over the years, Jane is one of our special alumni who has continuously demonstrated commitment, generosity, and support for the school through many roles as student, staff, and even parent. Today, we learn from Jane about the world of philanthropy and educational development, as she has an extensive career involving not just KIS, but Woodstock and CMC Vellore. Her wealth of knowledge is immensely valuable to all of us here working in the field. Many of our younger alumni watching today, this interview today, will know her name as memorialized in the walls of our high school library. But that is not the reason that she sits opposite me today. Jane is no doubt one of the key players in the establishment of our current alumni community. And today we get to learn more about the flame that she holds for the school and the continuation of this Alumni Association. And as alumni coordinator, it has been a real privilege to have been able to spend time with her, to learn from her and feed off this passion for giving. Jane, it's a real pleasure to have you with us today and to understand more about the growth of our alumni community and how we function. And I hope we can, just have fun in this conversation.
Well, Manjusha, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very privileged to talk with all of you and really look forward to our conversation. I hope it'll be fun and enjoyable and relaxed.
Yes. Let's start at the very beginning. You were class of 57. How many years did you spend at Cody School and, your siblings? Tell us more about that time.
Well, I suppose you could say I was one of those original Cody kids because I was actually born in Cody Connell at the Van Allen Hospital, as many of our older alumni have been. And I was there because my father, who had been in the Royal Navy, and after he retired, he came to India. They were British. He came to India and worked with the Imperial Tobacco Company. So when World War II broke out, as he had been a naval officer, he was called back into the then British Indian or Indian British Navy and served during the war. He died shortly after the war. And my mother, who had been staying in Cody while he was at sea, decided to work at Cody School. She was called to work as a house mother in what was then boys block. And so I went through all 12 grades at Cody and loved it. And actually, I also had the unique experience of being a student of Madame Montessori, the famous Montessori school.
Yes.
She was interred in Cody during the war, and she opened a small nursery school. And my very first experience of education was with Madame Montessori. So wow. I think that's the claim to fame.
And what would you say is one of your fondest memories of being in Cody?
Well, I think without a doubt, there are probably three things, and not in order of importance, but certainly I loved the hiking. We did a lot of hiking. The hills when I was there in the 50s they were just there were no tourists, and it was just our sort of paradise that we could hike and camp and get out as much as possible. The second thing I really enjoyed was my piano. I learned how to play the piano with Madame Kaspari, and I've kept it up throughout the years and loved the music programs. But really, the most important thing, obviously, is the friendships that I made. I continue to keep in touch with my Cody friends. In fact, I married a Cody classmate as well. And next, or in a couple of weeks' time, I will be joining the classes of 55, 56, and some 57 and 58ers at a reunion in Sedona, Arizona. It will be their probably their last reunion, but they've been meeting regularly, and it just shows the strength of the Cody ties. They're just invaluable for life.
Yes, they are. Ask you to explain what was that point as an adult that helped you re-engage with KIS and drive this passion that you have for education and advancement.
Right. Well, first of all, I wanted to say that for me, my reconnection with Cody after graduation was not based on a nostalgic going back to the good old days. Um, I had been living, my husband and I worked at CMC Bellore through the 60s and early 70s. And that was a time of very significant change at Cody. And the mission era was coming to an end. And up until that time, KIS had been mainly an American missionary school. But as the missionaries left and turned over their work and the churches and mission compounds to people in India, they left, and the demand for an American education decreased. So in the 60s, there was a time of great sort of soul searching, both at Cody and Woodstock, is what are we going to be, what is our future? You know, how are we going to maintain enrollment at both schools? In fact, there was a time when they talked about merging into one school, but that of course didn't happen. And each school went its own individual way. And what they decided on was to be a international Christian. So those three things, education, internationalism, and values based on Christianity, were the three things that were most important in my life. And here was a school that had a new vision. It had a new direction, and it was something that I really wanted to get involved with and to support. And after Frank Jayasingh, who was really the architect of the new Cody School, or the changing Cody School, wrote his project design, I was hooked. I mean, that project design, if you haven't read it, is an absolute, it's a wonderful statement of what education can do and how it can not only change lives, but it can change the world. And so to be able to base my career on a school that I loved, that had new and expanded values, was just wonderful for me. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, those were changing days, wasn't it?
They
And
were
that,
very,
yeah,
yeah,
and
huge changes at the
and
school.
really redefined what we are today, actually. We sit on some of
That's
those
right. Yeah.
foundations.
I know the project design has gone through a couple of revisions, but I think the wonderful thing about Cody is the school is that it has changed demographically. It has changed to meet the times. It has grown, but it has never forgotten the values that it holds most, that really dictate the kind of
Yes,
educational experience it will have. And
yes.
that's a remarkable thing for 100 and whatever,
20-year school.
120-year-old school. Yeah. Right. And I think in my work with alumni through the years, that was always one of the things that I just it was remarkable to me that whether I was talking to somebody who had graduated in the 1930s or whether I was working with somebody from the
Yeah.
1990s, they all had this feeling that it was the school itself and the friendships that teachers that they had that really changed their lives and made them want to do whatever they decided to do.
True, true. And I keep hearing the same too. files and files of office record stuff in my office, and in that is the establishment of our Alumni Association. And I noticed your name there, and I understand you're a key player in the establishment of our Alumni Association. And would you share with us, with our viewers today, because although we all belong to an alumni association, we don't know much about it or how we, it came to be. What drove us to create this association? That we were, when we were already in touch with many people, or was it to be in touch with people, or was there another reason?
Well, I think it all happened at about the same time in those 1970s when Dr. Frank Jayasinghe came to the school. And there was a connection here with one of the mission boards. It's the one mission board that I had worked with as well, the United Church Board of Rural Ministries. And they had been very influential in attracting Frank to the school. And so at about that same time, my husband and I and my kids we decided to go to Camp Agape. Yeah. So I went to Camp Agape, and it was fun and great and everything. But I thought to myself, we could be doing so much more. And I know that Frank and the mission board that was very involved in the school at that, Eric Goss and others, they were thinking too, it's not enough for us for our alumni just to meet casually and have fun. That's an important thing, but it's not the only thing. So perhaps it was the most instrumental paper I ever wrote, but driving back from that reunion to Atlanta, where we lived at the time, I wrote a paper, and I wrote what I thought the Alumni Association could do. And they liked what I had said, and Dr. Telfermook and Eric Goss and stuff gave me a small grant to get things going. So it literally started off in the basement of my house. Connections had been kept before that, way back into the 1930s. Miss Van Persum had written to alumni. Yeah. And then Don Wilder and Bob Carmen and Joe Rittman and others kept it up as a purely volunteer organization that they put out a publication saying where alumni were and sharing addresses. Yeah. So that part of it was already done by alumni, but it was strengthening the relationship with the school that was just so important. And I think has enabled alumni not only to enjoy their connections and their memories of Coady, but also to be engaged in this wonderful educational experience that Coady School is.
And I think as we grow as alumni, the way we engage, or at different stages in our lives, the way we engage with the school is different. Yes. So it's very important to have a variety of, that's what I have come to learn as well. It's important to have a variety of channels or ways that we can communicate and re-engage with the school. I was going through all those alumni magazines, and I saw there were things like curry clubs and Celebrate Coady. What were some of those events that we had, or those activities that we established in the earlier days?
Right. Well, let me just give you one other important piece of history there. At the same time that in the early 70s that the alumni got more organized, there was a CoadyCon Woodstock Foundation, a 501c3 American-based foundation, which was as the change from the mission-supported school came, the mission board set up a nonprofit organization that could channel support to the school, financial support and staff and all that kind of thing. So finally, I guess it was the mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, the two merged. The Alumni Association came in with the foundation and with Woodstock School, and we were then known as Coady Woodstock International. Yeah. And so under that umbrella, we did, I guess probably the 90s was, you might say, that the most dynamic decade for the work that KWI did for Coady and Woodstock. We had a wonderful board of directors. We had both Woodstock and Coady alumni, some mission board representatives. The principals of both schools always came to the meetings. The discussions that we had about education, what was happening in the world, how we could engage people it was wonderfully stimulating. It really was. And that was also the year that one of our alumni who had a connection put us in touch with ASHA, American Schools and
Yes.
Hospitals Abroad. And we got several grants from them. The first one was for computers. The second one was for the library. And Woodstock also got. So during the 90s, we had a very good relationship with ASHA. We haven't been able to continue it because of mainly ASHA sees the schools as somewhat sectarian, which is against their program. But in addition to that stimulating environment that sort of led us to create new opportunities for alumni to engage. So then we did have the curry clubs. They were regional groups. We had representatives in different regions. This was mostly in North America because that's where we were operating from. We had regional events, the class secretaries. We also, for some years, published the Coady Alumni magazine in North America before it went back to being published at Coady. And I think as I look back on it, we always had a liaison at the school, an alumni liaison, but the work was really being driven by the North American thing. And because this was the 90s, the majority of Coady graduates were living in North America. Yeah. We didn't have social media. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Zoom. We hardly had, I mean, cell phones were just coming in and computers. We did have computers, which was great. So it was far easier for us to connect from here with this large constituency of alumni. And then we sort of branched from there. We started the SAGE program, which was called Studies Abroad for Global Education. And that enabled students from American high schools to go to Coady or Woodstock for a semester or a year. And it's amazing to me how many of them loved it so much that they stayed to graduate. Yes. They just loved that experience. So the SAGE was another thing that we started. And then we were also doing fundraising. We raised funds for, well, we started with raising funds for Performing Arts Center, which was going to be in the basement or where the chapel, just opposite the chapel, the covered court is. But we couldn't get the permission. So we finally, those funds raised for that were put into Alumni Hall, which is where the gym is and it's called Alumni Hall. Yeah. But if you walk around the campus, you'll see the names of people plaques of people who, contributed significantly to Coady School. And it was great. Yeah. It was a very, very wonderful time to be involved with it. It really was.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, even when I did the tour video last year for the KIS Global Changemakers, it was just like almost every point in our route around the school, you see a name and you see a significant name or someone, a family that has contributed to the school. And it just means so much. And in fact, I was telling one of the kids, I'm going to interview Jane Cummings today. Oh, the high school librarian. And I said, no, she's not the librarian.
No.
I was like, and then, I had to tell them about you. And so I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to know about the people behind the scenes as well. Yeah. And in
another thing that I did those years, which probably was the most fun, and that was the tours that I took to India. Yes. We started taking alumni tours. So we would publicize them amongst our two alumni constituencies, Coady and Woodstock. And in those days, people were not traveling back and forth with the frequency and ease that they do now. And so I think I led 16 groups to India. Wow. We would always go to either Coady and Woodstock. Often we would go to both schools. Yeah. But then we would also do other things. We went to Bhutan one year, we went to Nepal one year, Sri Lanka another year, and then of course visited the other parts of India and often engaged with alumni in those parts of India that we went to. So that was great fun. Loved doing that.
And it's fun receiving alumni, I have to say, and we had so much of fun receiving big class groups when they come for their reunions and things like that. So I think Coady, and everyone keeps saying Coady has got this warm, welcoming spirit. So as soon as they come, they want to do everything that they used to do as kids, no matter what the age. It's really nice to watch. And we're also pre-COVID, we wanted to bring back these tours through Eva Karin Hackinson, who was in Sweden. So she wanted to run some of these tours again. But hopefully after COVID, we can do that.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yes. At the end of the 90s, we were speaking about the 90s, you worked closely with Dr. Paul Wiebe, the former principal, on the Sentinel In Celebration book. Could you tell us a little bit more about that experience and what it was like?
Yeah. Well, obviously, 19, what was it, 1990? What year was it?
I think 2001. It was
2001.
released 2001.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the Centennial was just a marvelous opportunity to celebrate Coady. And Paul Wiebe, who was probably one of the best principals Coady has ever had, was still there. And he had a great team of people, Peter Lugg, Peter Jenks. You know, it was really a strong core group there at the time. And so we started planning the Centennial and what we would do. And Ben Johnson and his wife were there at the time. He's class of 40 something, and he's a wonderful photographer.
Yes.
So Paul asked Ben and I to produce a book. And so we did produce the book in celebration. It was a hard copy and a soft copy book. Ben's pictures were fantastic. And I wrote the history, which takes Coady from its very beginning up through that year.
Yes.
Had great fun doing that too. I mean, I went to places like Harvard where the archives were. They had some mission archives there, missionary archives, and I loved doing that research. And I spent some time at Coady, obviously going through your archives, and just trying to put together a brief history. I mean, it's not a comprehensive history, but it does cover the school from its very small beginnings with Margaret Eddy with her 14 or 15 or 13, I guess it was, little children in a bungalow, to what the school was then. And it was a great event. We had music, dance, concerts. You know, Coady School puts on a wonderful show when they put their mind to it. And the celebration, the Centennial celebration was great. I think Mr. Chidumbram, who was the finance minister for the central government, was our honored guest. Yeah. And quite a few alumni made it there, and it was a good time. And we were really, again, to go back to what I think we were celebrating this school that had started in such a small way and in such a very different era. Yeah. When the world was just so different. Yeah. And it had survived all of these years. It had changed dramatically from small missionary school and then larger, and then getting kids from other, and then of course the big switch in the 70s to the international school. And it did it all, but it never forgot its basic educational, international Christian values roots.
Yes, and that's, I keep getting amazed every time I go through the In Celebration book, because I love reading history, and you know, I dive into it. Sometimes I go into the archives and bury myself. It's my secret spot. but it's amazing how we started, and the hardships we faced, the many lives we've lost, in fact, in the earlier days, kids to, you know, disease or fallen or lack of medical supplies. We even had, you know, a dorm parent who, Elizabeth Boyer, who was lost on the Egypt, and you know, that the voyages and stuff like that we keep hearing. And even you mentioned in the introduction, Maria Montessori, Madame Caspari. These are legendary names, and we don't know much about it. We don't speak much about it. It's so important. Yeah. We face, I mean, as an alumni association, let's look at the past. We faced many challenges. What were those challenges, and how do you think we overcame those or still working to overcome some of these challenges?
I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think it's a challenge that's decreasing somewhat, but one of our biggest challenges was the separation, the geographic separation from the school to most of our alumni.
Yeah.
Successful alumni associations in North America, and I've visited lots and lots of schools.
Yes.
They invite their alumni over for events. They give them play tickets. You know, alumni
Yeah.
just get so engaged in the school, and of course that helps enormously with fundraising.
Yeah.
Because the alumni can be engaged. But for us, especially in the early years, to have that connection, that close connection, how do we make Cody School as it is today real to people?
Yeah.
Not forgetting the past, but building on the future. How do we make it
Yep.
real? You know, I remember the first telephone conversation I had with, I guess it was Dr. Hobble was the principal.
Yeah.
You know, and just an amazing that I could pick up the phone and talk to him. So, you know, we were writing back and forth.
Yeah.
Letters took a while. So that physical separation from the people that you were trying to get engaged was a serious challenge
Yeah.
to overcome.
Yeah.
That's why an organization like KWI and now Cody Friends was so important in those years, because
Yeah.
they were the ones that had to bring the message from the school and channel it through various regional groups, board people, and so on. That challenge you don't have anymore. You know, here we are talking like you were in the next room or something.
Yes.
But how still to engage alumni? It's always going to be a challenge because of the physical distance between this group.
Yeah.
Of course, bringing more groups to Cody is a huge success. I mean, if you can have class reunions, if you can have homecoming days, you know, when people come. The other challenge with a school like Cody and Woodstock, schools like that, is we're scattered all over the world. You know,
Yes.
I mean, North America increasingly is only a small part of your worldwide alumni community. And how do you engage that worldwide community and make that and bring them back to the campus and bring them back to Cody Friends and so on? So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. It's not that alumni can't or don't want to be motivated to be engaged. It's finding the proper channels to engage them.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned Cody Friends, I'll ask you, could you tell us more about how it was, you know, you mentioned how it was established, but what is it today and how does it work today? How can us as alumni engage with KFI, as we abbreviate it?
Right. Well, KFI sort of emerged from KWI, Cody Woodstock International. It was again, finding the right structure was complicated because you had two schools, you had one foundation, you had alumni groups. So bringing it all together under KWI worked for that period of time in the school, both schools' histories. So we had separate alumni groups that met and planned the events for that group under the umbrella of KWI. But KWI was, and our board members came from both Woodstock and Cody groups, and we're under this umbrella organization. But then around about the mid 2000s, the schools were changing, times were changing. So any organization, if they don't keep abreast of the changing times, they're going to have problems.
Yes.
So the board of directors, after lots of thought, really decided that perhaps it was best to separate the two groups into a Woodstock group and a Cody group. And the reason, well, there were a couple of reasons. One was Cody had gone through a couple of challenging leadership changes at the top, and there hadn't been as much contact with alumni. And Woodstock, on the other hand, was entering its 150th year celebration and had a huge campaign and everything planning. So that was, there was sort of a separation. And it's just that, more and more we thought, well, these are two independent schools now. They need to set their own course in alumni relations and development and go their own way. And so in 2006, we devolved. I love that word.
Yeah.
We devolved. KWI devolved into two separate organizations, the Friends of Woodstock School and the Coady Friends International. And at that time, Jean Hennig and John Mackay were real strong leaders of forming Coady Friends International. And I sort of, at that point, I was going through, my husband had just passed away and I was looking for a change, and Woodstock invited me to be director of development. So that's the road that I went, because it just was where I was personally that I needed to make that change. And so the two sort of went separate ways, and Coady Friends emerged from KWI, has had some good leaders and great stuff going on. I haven't been much involved with KFI until the last 3 years when I joined the board again.
Okay. But this year, with the help of your stewardship, KFI was able to raise over 100,000 US dollars for scholarships and the Education in Coady project. And kudos, I have to say, thank you so much for helping us do that. But could you tell us what it felt like to work with the team of leaders in raising these funds and what it involved?
Well, absolutely. And, it was, again, just one of those serendipitous things. We were sort of looking, I think KFI was looking at, all right, what's the next step? How do we move forward? And then the pandemic hit. And I still remember the board meeting with Corey. We met by Zoom, of course. And Corey was explaining the situation in Coady, and the desperate situation in education for not only the Coady students, but also for the kids in the community who had even less going for them than the Coady kids. They had no internet. They come from homes that are not well off, probably may have cell phones, but may not have internet. So it was a time when it just was this was just a real need, a real, very real, immediate need. And one of our board members, bless his heart, said, I'm willing to make a leadership pledge for this to get it going. So once we had that support from a couple of board members, then you just had to go out with the story. I mean, the story was magnificent. I mean, tragic, but magnificent in that it was something people could relate to. It was something that could really, and so then it's a matter of using mechanics of fundraising, which are, leadership gifts and getting classes behind a class gift and that kind of thing. Are, they're all sort of tried and true fundraising methods that will work. They do work.
Yeah,
and
but it's
so
not
I
an
think
easy job. Like you make it sound so easy.
well, and then once again, I mean, I think there's another element. It's when people reach out to people. I mean,
Yes.
the personal touch in fundraising is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
That they respond to people they know. They respond obviously to the need or to whatever the challenge is that they're being presented to. But then it's personal contacts and being in touch with them and so on. And so that, I think, is why but all of the board worked very hard on it, and it was great. I'm so glad we could. And a special thank to the leadership pledges, which were wonderful. There were 6 or 7 people who came forward and really made it possible.
Yes. And I'm glad you mentioned the word personal touch, because I think that's a very unique quality of our alumni community. And the fact that we have this, unlike other larger university alumni associations and other schools, I think we do maintain that personal touch. And that's possibly why that makes us quite special as a community. Would you agree with that?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, people just love to meet other Cody people, and it doesn't matter. I
Yeah,
mean, some of the people that I've worked with who are way younger than I am have just been great, and I love talking with them, and we share so much in common, and it's great. And honestly, Manjusha, we do have an amazing group of alumni. We just
we
really
do.
do.
We do.
If you look at the spread and the interests that they have, the work that they do, and it doesn't matter. They don't even have to have done something, though we have a lot of wonderful leaders of various enterprises or nonprofits or whatever, but just ordinary people. There,
Yes.
it's a great group of alumni. And
I mean, I
I
have young, really young, fresh graduates asking, how can we get involved with the Alumni Association? What would you say to them? I mean, um, and on that, I mean, they just want to help. They want to help somehow. Or how would you say they could help and get involved?
Well, there again, I think there are a couple of challenges there. One is, one of the things that Cody School has wanted to do, and the pandemic has really pushed it back again, is get a director of development who has the total responsibility of merging all of the fundraising and alumni events and all of that into under one
Yeah.
big umbrella. And I think once you have a director of development, the way will open up. Um, Again, it's finding those people that can motivate others. I think finding people in professions who are willing to mentor other younger
Yes.
alumni, getting them that way,
Yeah.
getting some of the regional groups reactivated. I
Yeah.
think would be a great idea. um, I think again it's finding the structure. It's finding out how much the school wants help from people in the different parts of the world. Like, I mean, you've got alumni all over the world now.
Yes.
Australia, New Zealand, and of course India is huge. It's finding people, and North America, perhaps with the support of KFI. It's finding the people who have the passion to make an alumni make alumni events and
Yes.
regional events work. I think that's a huge step forward, and I think the school having, and you've done an amazing job with your communication.
Yeah.
I think this last year with the quad talks, you have brought people in who have been feeling very isolated from the school with the interesting conversations that you've had, and promoting them and publicizing them and making sure alumni know about that. I think that'll be a huge thing. um, yeah, just having like, and now we have, our communication is so much better. The pandemic obviously has put, I mean, it's just been disastrous for the whole world, and it's pushed things back. It's been a year when perhaps you could not move as fast with what you wanted to do as I hope you can do in the future.
Yeah, I know. Actually, the pandemic has come like a double-edged sword in terms of all of us being isolated. But at the same time, it opened up the world of virtual events for many of us. For a school like KIS, that has been an added advantage. Like you said, we don't have our alumni on ground to, when they visit mom and dad, to pop in through the gates and
Right.
come and see us. So I think the virtual space and having it really opened up and having people at home working from home and having a little bit more time than the commute that they saved up to spend with
Yeah.
us has been really helpful in the sense of bringing us together as a community. And it was fantastic, this last month, I congratulated the class of 2021 when we sent out pictures, and we had comments and invites from alumni saying, oh, you're joining this college, come, ping me and I'm happy to take you through. I'll give you this, show you the strings, or you're coming to this city, visit me. And the young kids were, just overjoyed by that welcome, and then they don't feel like, oh God, I'm leaving Cody and this year has been terrible. I didn't get my prom, I didn't get my whatnot.
Excuse me.
The alumni community has really supported us in every aspect, not just funding our projects and our ideas, but also welcoming each other into their homes and making it. That's
and
wonderful.
right, and you are absolutely key to that whole thing of keeping them in touch, and I do commend you because you're doing a wonderful job. Just
Thank you, Jane.
Job.
We're going to wind up now. So any closing comments for our alumni watching today? I think we sort of ran through it all.
Oh my goodness, what can I say? I mean, I think you will always value your Cody years. They just are very significant. They're obviously the most formative years of your life in many ways, and there you were up on that hill station in boarding and making very close connections. Keep them up, and just find out what Cody School is doing. I mean, for me, just to keep engaged with what they're doing amazing things in education. I mean, what was it? You had 2 IB students that had perfect scores this year. Right?
I mean,
That's incredible.
Yes.
That is just incredible. But not only that, the music, the art, the drama,
the
colleges they go to, and then what they do with their lives. I mean, it's a great story. Cody's
we have so much of content. I really can't keep up with it, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be typing about something or writing about something, and by that time the next thing has already happened, or kids are coming up with more ideas and projects, and you're like, wow, where did these kids come up with these ideas?
It's just impressive. And that's going to be there. That is. And I just, I guess my thing for alumni is open those emails that you get from school. Find out about it. Find out about it. Find out about ways you can get engaged. You can do something for the school. It doesn't have to be only financial at all. There are just so many other things, and relationships with other schools. I mean, I think that was something that we did in the early years. We had a student exchange program with Taft School in Connecticut. For many years, that was a very successful exchange student. We were looking at faculty exchanges. There's just so much.
And many of these connections are brought through alumni. Many of these even our field trip ideas, ideas for field trips, and we reconnect with alumni in India itself. We connect with schools where alumni are working. We connect with universities where alumni are working. It's in every aspect. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. So again, it's just finding a structure that brings it all together and goes back out again.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jane, for
it's been a pleasure.
the structure.
Pleasure. I mean, I'm sorry that we, those of us who would still like to come and visit Cody or visit the school again, we're on hold for a few more years, I'm sure. But
your event, I think in Texas will be well timed, and we usually with virtual events also we participate. So last year, I think we had 2 years back, was it, where we came virtually online and engaged with your class on a screen. But
I'm just my task tomorrow is to ask you to do that for our reunion. So
well, tick.
Okay.
Done.
Okay, great. No, we are meeting it in September, so we would love to have.
Yes. All right, then. Thank you so much, Jane. That was really informative. And I think a lot of us who are not so engaged with the school and community have learned quite a bit about how we establish. And I think this is quite important knowledge for all of us to know and maybe refer back to, just to get a broader understanding of what we belong to and where we come from and who's working. I mean, there's a huge community, about 6,000 of us. So we can't talk about each and every one of us, but this is a great opportunity to understand how we work and that we're not only, I mean, many people think when the alumni coordinator calls, it's about money, but it's not. It's not. We just want to keep in touch,
Yeah.
and we want to, just re-engage with you. That's it. Thank you
It's
very
great to be
much.
now. And all the best to you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.